Shooting 35mm street photography is very hard. But in today's video, I'm going to explain how you can make it much easier. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nathan Miles, and I am a street photographer based mostly out of London. I used to shoot fully digital, and I did do for about 3 or 4 years before moving nicely over to film. Since I've moved to film, I haven't looked back, and here are some of the things that I've learned since swapping digital to film that I know will make your life so much easier. Yep, that's right. The first one is shooting with a point and shoot. This particular camera, a Yashica T4, is one of the best in the business, but it's quite expensive. But not all point and shoot film cameras are that expensive. They can be picked up at a very good price. You just got to shop around and do a little bit of research. The reason why point and shoots are such a good place to start is because they are literally as simple as that. You point and shoot. There are a few variations that you can adjust slightly, but for the main part, they are pointing and shooting. And if you're starting with 35mm film, just to get your eye in, it's a fantastic place to start. So next up is zone focusing, and let me firstly explain what zone focusing is. Zone focusing is a technique where you set your camera's focus to a distance range, aka a zone, instead of auto-focusing or constantly having to adjust your focus. It's particularly useful in street photography and other situations where speed and capturing candid moments are crucial. Assuming you're ignoring or moving on from a point and shoot, an SLR or a rangefinder is a perfect way to use zone focusing. Most people feel that using a rangefinder is the best way for zone focusing, and they're probably right. However, most SLRs have distances on them to give you an idea, and we can set that and then head towards our target and then release the shutter. This becomes even more effective at narrow apertures, which brings me nicely onto point number 3. When shooting a narrow aperture, you're going to find that more of the photo is in focus, which is brilliant news when you're on the streets and you're approaching a subject. Because when you're using a wider aperture, it's much harder to keep your subject in focus. So when we're approaching a subject with a narrow aperture, say f11, then you're going to have a much broader zone of focus. So you're much more likely to get the subject you want sharp and in focus. But getting used to your focal distances, whether it's 1, 3, or 5 meters, is going to take some getting used to. So make sure you're prepared to practice. Film photography is a challenge, especially for street photography where everything moves so fast. When you're manually focusing and manually exposing your photos, you're gonna get some crazy results, but embrace the imperfections. You're gonna get grain, you're gonna get missed focus, and you're gonna get interesting compositions. Well, in my opinion, you should embrace and lean into those imperfections, because quite often they can come up with some really interesting images, just like this one. Obviously, we can do this with digital, but there's a way that film registers colors that digital simply can't. For example, the portrait range, which is absolutely elite. So start learning about colors, whether that's primary colors, complementary colors, analogous, or even monochromatic. These are aesthetically pleasing and can take your photography to the next level. Quite often, if I'm in an area with lots of street art, I will use that to see if I can take an interesting or unique image. One of my favorite ways to do this is by using faces, or specifically eyes. Textures are a great way to create art. Street photography doesn't have to be as simple as just taking a photo of a subject. It can be more abstract. You can shoot through textures to create abstract images of people in the street. It's a great way to shoot people when you've just started shooting street photography, because you're not technically shooting at the person, so you can do it much more subtly without them knowing. And quite often the images look really cool. Assuming we're shooting with color negative film, we need light. So the more light in our film, the easier it is to nail exposure and keep things in focus. As we mentioned before, having more light means we can shoot a narrow aperture, which means it's easier to nail focus. It's also good to have more light than less light, because color negative film craves light. It's better to overexpose than underexpose. essentially meaning it's important that we protect our shadows when shooting color negative film, but just bear in mind the higher the ISO, the more grain that is invited into the photo. Right then, this is your last point. And although I do mean physically slow down, it's really important that we find an area and we maybe stay there a little bit and see what things we can get. Because quite often we can walk straight through the area without really analysing it and seeing what we can get. But I also mean slow down on changing cameras and lenses. Find a camera and a focal length that works for you and work on that until you're very confident that you know the camera and the lens inside out. This is going to help you get much better photos all round. And once you do nail that, then you can get a bit experimental. Yes, this is a little bit rich coming from me because if you know me pretty well, you'll know I have a lot of cameras. I have gas. I love buying new equipment, new books, and it's a problem. I'm working on it. But the best bit of advice I can give you to start with when you're a new photographer is work out of one camera and one focal length. It's gonna make your life so much easier to start with, as I said. I guarantee if you do those 9 steps from a place of just coming from digital or just starting film photography on the street, you're gonna get much, much better images. Let me know which point was the best for you. Make sure you're subscribed because there is tons more videos coming just like this. And follow me on Instagram where you'll be able to see all of my work and hopefully get a bit of inspiration and we can connect. And you never know, might see you in London and we can shoot. Till the next one, peace.